Hello and welcome. Tonight we are thinking about Talking Faith at Christmas, and I'm very pleased to have Louise Franklin with me, as she will be doing most of the talking. We are going to have a conversation about this. We will talk, and then at the end I'm going to invite anybody else who's got questions to ask questions, ideas to share ideas, thoughts that they've come up with during the conversation to share those thoughts, whatever you want to at the end. So if you can just save those till the end of the conversation I have with Louise, that would be fantastic. So Louise, perhaps we'd like to start by you just explaining why in particular we've picked on you to answer all this varied array of questions about Talking Faith at Christmas.
Okay, thank you. I'm Louise. I'm the minister of two marvellous churches, St David's in Eastham and West Kirby URC. And a couple of years ago, I went on sabbatical primarily to look at what works well at Christmas, what evangelistic stuff works well at Christmas. So the intention was to go around the country, finding out some examples of good practice, meeting lots of different people, and then a resurgence of COVID happened, so I didn't quite have as full an experience as I wanted to do, but I did get to visit several different places and interview lots of different church leaders on Zoom, so I've got some things to share about evangelism at Christmas.
That's fabulous, and I'm sure like me, everybody else is really looking forward to hearing some of those thoughts. Louise did say earlier she didn't want to come across as the expert in all of this, and we're not treating you as the expert, but we're just really sort of hoping tonight just to gain some knowledge from all that you found and discovered whilst on your sabbatical. So perhaps the first place to start is say, I was going to say what's so special about Christmas, but we all know that Jesus was born and that's why Christmas is special. But what's so special about Talking Faith at Christmas? I guess what I'm asking is, does Christmas present us with opportunities that we don't have at other times of the year, for instance?
I think so. And you said, of course, we know that Jesus was born at Christmas. Not everybody does know that Jesus is born at Christmas. We started a youth group at West Kirby URC for non-church people. And that was a penny drop moment that one of the teenagers had last week, that they had never connected Christmas with Christ. So let's not assume that everybody else does that. I think we've got some generations of people who have no idea about what the reason behind our Christian festivals are. But anyway, I think Christmas is a great opportunity to talk about Jesus, to invite people to church, because it's still a cultural British expectation. People do Christmas and people broadly understand what you mean when you talk about Christmas. So people generally know about carol services, they know about the nativity. And so it's an easy invite for lots of people to invite people to things at Christmas, because most people understand what Christmas is about. Obviously there's some that don't, but most people have an inkling that what Christmas is about, and it's an okay thing. It's an opportunity. Everybody is happy to be celebrating, whether they're celebrating the same things that we are, but people are generally more receptive, I think, at Christmas to an invitation than they are at other times of the year. Not that we shouldn't be inviting at other times of the year, but Christmas is an easy ask, I think, generally.
And do you think, I mean, I hear what you say before about, for some people, we can't take for granted that they know it's the birth of Jesus. But do you still think for lots of non-Christian friends that you've had, and from the people you spoke to during your research, do you still think there's kind of some kind of spiritual connection at Christmas, some kind of underlying spirituality that people connect into? I guess even if it's a feeling of love and goodness and family, you know.
I mean, I think so. I try and invite my non-Christian friends to things like carol services, and pretty much every time that people come at Christmas or a normal Sunday, I have to say as well, we generally find that they're crying about something or other. And because I think people have an experience of the Holy Spirit, but they don't know that it's the Holy Spirit. And so I think people come and connect with something other and don't know what it is. And I think, you know, when people come and sing familiar carols, they connect to something they know from their childhood, perhaps. I think we'll get to that a bit later. And I think that's perhaps awakens a remembering of what they once knew. And I think that's a good thing.
And then we're going to talk later about some ideas of things that people can try at Christmas, different events that might work that enable us to talk faith. But do you think also just our Sunday morning service, do you think that's an evangelistic opportunity more so at Christmas than other times of the year?
I mean, I think everything we do is an evangelistic opportunity. Every Sunday is an opportunity to share the gospel, I think, with people. And I think sometimes we are more embarrassed of ourselves as the church than other people are of us.
Right, yeah.
I think we think that everything has to be perfect or professional. And for example, we've had new people come fairly recently at St David's at my church in Eastham, and we're not we are a professional church, but we're not shiny. We don't have, you know, an amazing band. We have a brilliant organist, but it's not kind of trendy. But people have come and people have stayed because of the warmth of the welcome, because of the friendliness of the people, and because the authenticity they find there. Mm-hmm. And so things don't have to be perfect. They have to be real.
Okay. So
and that you can do that every Sunday of the year, not just at Christmas.
I think that leads me on then to thinking about kind of talking faith or evangelism at Christmas. Let's just try and understand what we actually mean by this. Are you saying that we should be stood next to the sprouts in our fruit and veg aisle at our local supermarket, or in the queue for people are waiting for turkeys? What do you mean? Are we talking about high street or something different?
I'm not sure that street evangelism works in a way that it used to do. But having said that, I became a Christian through hearing the gospel from a street preacher. So it does have its place if it's done really well. All the examples I've seen of street evangelism lately, my husband had to stop me accosting a man in Birkenhead a few weeks ago because he was doing such a bad job of it. And I really wanted to stop him and say, look, this is not working. Shouting at people, telling them they're going to hell and that God condemns them isn't a way. There may be biblical truth behind that, but it isn't a way to catch people's attention and to get them to hear the good bit of the good news. So when we talk about talking faith at Christmas, I think the beginning point of all our evangelistic efforts have to be in relationship, and it's the people that we connect with every day, the people that use our church buildings, the people in our families, in our workplaces, the people we connect with through our social lives, you know, our neighbours, our friends, the people we interact with, maybe over sprouts and turkeys, but the people that we've built relationships with, that's our starting point, is relationships. It's much easier to begin from a place of kind of mutual respect. And
I'm glad you talked about that kind of cultural shift, because I think for me personally, I much rather warm to the idea of talking to somebody that I already know, that I'm, you know, friends with, than I am accosting people by sprouts. for any reason come to that.
I'm not saying that street evangelism doesn't have its place, because there are some people that do it really well, but I think they're fewer and far between than our relationships with people.
And I guess one form of street evangelism, if that's what we want to call it, at Christmas, I have been involved with in previous churches I've worked with, has just simply been carol singing at the local shops on a Saturday morning, and that seems to have been quite an effective witness to our faith. But relationships, I guess that's
Absolutely.
really the message that you're sharing. So do you think then, and perhaps you've already answered this, but let's just delve into it a little bit deeper. Relationships, do you think those relationships work better at Christmas?
Well, I think it depends what you've been doing for the rest of the year. I think people accept an invitation not necessarily because it's Christmas. They accept an invitation because of the relationship they have with you.
So let's just talk about invitation, because I've got the advantage of having read the paper that you wrote from your sabbatical, and I know you talk in there a little bit about invitation, and you spoke to Michael Harvey, who's responsible for the season of invitation. People can be scared, can't they, of inviting people. So is there a way to overcome our fear, do you think?
Michael Harvey and I spoke about the difference between confidence and courage. We speak a lot, don't we, in our churches about we just need the confidence to do things. We just need the confidence to be able to speak about our faith. We need the confidence to introduce people to Jesus. And he said, well, actually, that he doesn't think that's the case. He said to me that we're never going to have enough confidence as the church. What we do need is God-given courage. And there's a difference there, isn't there? The courage just to say, look, we need to step out in faith, and we need to be obedient to what Jesus calls us to do. And we need just the courage to step out and talk about our faith, to invite, to make connections, to spread the gospel in whatever ways we can. And it's okay if people say no, because sometimes that happens.
And as I say, I guess sometimes it's that fear of failure, isn't it? It's just fear that somebody says no. Is there a way to even come over the fear of failure, do you think?
Well, is it a failure if someone says no? Is it a failure?
Well, I don't think so. No.
Is the success in actually doing the asking? Because in many ways, it's actually God that's doing the asking through us, and God's responsible for the yes. It's God who's responsible for working through his Holy Spirit into the hearts of people that we are inviting. It's God who convicts people of their sin. It's God who moves people nearer to Jesus. It's the Holy Spirit's job. It's our job to help do the asking and let God work through that. And I think if we have been praying for our non-Christian friends, if we've been praying intentionally that God would be working in their lives, that God would be blessing them, that God would be giving you opportunities to speak into their lives, and then I think it's an easier ask if you have undergirded your invitation with prayer. How much are we praying for the people that surround us? The people that we're wanting to see in church and invite to things? Are we actually praying for them so we don't go in cold with an invitation?
So that's a good reminder. So that's two things to really think about: is prayer and relationship, and praying for those people we have relationships with. So let's just think a little bit now to kind of start to think about what we do at Christmas then. I kind of think that Christmas, I love Christmas. It's a wonderful time. I think that even the most hard-hearted of us can perhaps think back to a special time that we've experienced at Christmas. Do you think that sense of special, of nostalgia almost, do you think that's an important aspect of what we do, Louise?
I do think it's an important aspect. I read somebody's MA research all about one carol service. They did a whole thesis on what helps people connect, and what seemingly helps people connect in carol services. It was an interesting piece of research. Are the things that we might not expect. It's traditional carols. It's things that people remember from their childhood. If they've not been to church for many years, it's the things that remind them of when life was simpler and more straightforward, and perhaps when their faith was on a firmer footing. And so those things that create a meaningful moment, things like candlelight, and the opportunity to partake in a service by doing something, by lighting a candle or by putting a prayer on a tree, by doing something that helps them connect, are the things that this research suggests were really important. It also said things like, don't mess around with the words of the carols. I love messing around with words.
I know, and I've been guilty of that, saying, "Oh well, this particular carol doesn't fit into my theology anymore, so therefore I'll change that." But then as you've been talking, I was taken back to a moment that my last church used to do an event. It was, let's see if you can imagine where it was set. It was very imaginatively called Beer and Carols. So set in the pub, and I remember. During, I can't tell you what carol we were singing, but a traditional carol, finding a chap at the bar who was in floods of tears. And when I went up to talk to him about it, it was exactly what you said. It was that connection to the past that drew him back from a time, I don't know whether it was a time it was simpler, a time, I don't know what it was, but that it really kind of powerfully moved him.
Now, none of that is rocket science.
No.
We all actually know that already. It's nothing new. But kind of we've done all of that, and maybe we want to do something different. But actually, that's a connecting point for people in the community. Not just that, there are other things as well. But that sense of creating meaningful moments through igniting people's senses in worship.
You've intimated
a sense of wonder.
You've intimated already that there's an important sense about symbolism at Christmas.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's lots of theological symbolism we call on, Jesus being the light of the world, the word, and all of that can take part in our worship. We can use creativity in how we do that. But this research was saying that, we need to be mindful of what people would remember from their childhood. And obviously that differs, doesn't it, for every generation. So trying to think about who is it, who are the people that I'm wanting to connect with in this thing that I'm doing, in this carol service or in this evangelistic event. Who is it that's my demographic, as it were, and what are their connection points, what would work with symbolism for them.
And I think, again, we will come on to sort of event ideas in a moment, but evangelistic events aren't necessarily always what we think of. And as we're talking about all that, I know that we were involved in doing what we called in the first Sunday of Advent, so leading up to Christmas, our service of loving remembrance, which was a time where we could invite people who we sadly had to connect with through a funeral, or just anybody who'd lost somebody over the last 90 years, if that's how long it was, to come to a service that almost gave them permission then to go on and enjoy Christmas despite their loved one not being with them. And part of our activity to draw them into the service was to give them they had a star there at the loved one's name on the back of it, they hung it on the Christmas tree, and that was an incredibly powerful part of that worship that I think drew people and connected them closer to God.
Absolutely.
Would you say that rung true from what you discovered when you were?
Yeah, I visited 2 live Blue Christmas services and 2 online Blue Christmas services, which I guess is the same a similar sort of thing. We did some last year at my church at West Kirby, and gave the people the opportunity to remember someone who died by lighting a candle, or by placing a pebble, or by writing their name and placing their name on the tree. And I think because also I think Christmas, a lot of what we do at Christmas is one aimed at families, and it's aimed at happiness. I love Christmas. It's my favourite time of year, but it's all a bit, happy, happy, happy. We're all celebrating. Well, what do we do for those folk that's not the place where they're at? Or people who haven't got families, who don't want loud, who want something perhaps a little bit more reflective or a little bit more quiet, or people who've lost folk that year. I think it's also a good opportunity to help people connect in quieter ways, in perhaps more symbolic ways, in ways that help them connect with whatever else is going on in their lives. And there's been a growing trend of that sort of thing, of blue Christmas services, or quieter Christmas services, or whatever you want to call it, services of loving remembrance, to help people do that. I think people appreciate that, I think.
So just thinking on a little bit now, both myself and Louise are part of a movement called Leading Your Church into Growth, and one of the statements at Leading Your Church into Growth is, I'm going, it's going to be good, would you like to come as well? And how important do you think it is for Christmas to embody that statement and to fit into a more long-term strategy of growth, if you like?
There's about 3 questions in that.
I guess where I'm thinking of, Louise.
Right, let's start with the statement. It's going to be good. I'm going. Come with me. It's just a simple question of invitation, isn't it? But it's an invitation that it's a question that you need to back up with sitting with the person, having coffee maybe afterwards, and finding out afterwards what they thought of it. Again, none of this is rocket science, is it? It's not actually dead complicated. We know relationships work, and if you invite someone and say, look, I'm coming, you can come with me, you can sit with me, it's gonna be good. I've seen it, I've seen something like this before, come with me. And that, I think, is really healthy and holy.
I guess as I talk about Christmas, I keep thinking back to that famous Christmas advert. You remember, a dog's not just for Christmas, it's for the whole of the year, And I kind of think it draws me into, but hopefully our new people that come to church aren't just there for Christmas.
Absolutely
we'll see
not.
them into the new year and into Easter and through the summer. Did you see any good examples of churches that had done that well? So in other words, they had taken the people invited to Christmas and kept them there.
I mean, I think everybody tries hard to do that, and I think there are some things that help better to do that. So I generally learned 5 things. My 5 big points that I learned from the churches I visited on my sabbatical was the power of invitation and relationship, which is we've mentioned already. Embracing the wonder of Christmas, we've mentioned that. The power of community. You might talk about that, I don't know if you will. Thinking through a whole year, not just at Christmas. And the 5th thing I learned at churches that did evangelism well at Christmas, thought through their next steps. So what are we going to do with these people that have come through our doors at Christmas?
Let me just take you back for a second with something you said and moved over quite quickly about you fitting into a wider plan of events for the year. Just say a little bit more about that, and then we'll come on to what you just talk about.
So in terms of how we look at evangelism for the whole year, Christmas isn't the only opportunity that we have. It's a big opportunity, but it's not the only one. So I encourage, I think Leipzig Leading Your Church into Growth encourages churches to look at their whole year. And at the beginning of a new year, or at the end of a year going into another year, is plan out what you're going to do for the next year. And they categorize it helpfully with 4 different P's. I'll have a P, please, Bob. Some of you are too young to remember that. So 4 P's of things to be fitting in to your church year. And one is prayer events. So I said that, you know, your invitation should be undergirded by prayer. What are those things in our churches where we're praying for our local community, where we're undergirding our invitation with prayer? Presence events. So the things that we do in our community, like food banks and toddler groups and chill and chats and all the things that we do where we meet with people, they're presence events. We are sitting with people, and their community events, their presence events. And then they have persuasion events. So they're things like Alpha, or the Start course, or the Pilgrim course, or those things where you're articulating what the gospel is in an aim to persuade others. And the final P is a proclamation event, and they're gospel. That's a showing of the gospel. That's a telling of the gospel. So it could be a comedy at Christmas night where your comedian is giving a testimony. It could be inviting a speaker in. It could be a number of different things. And so you know, we think, well, how are you planning your whole year as a church, and you're making sure that you've got all of that in there. Also, as part of my sabbatical, it's a slightly different way of looking at it. My mentor was the national evangelist for Elim, the denomination Elim, a chap called Mark Greenwood. And he has this way of thinking about it, that what he wouldn't use prayer, presence, proclamation and persuasion. He uses 3 simple terms. He says big yes, little yes, and healthy maybes. Often in the church, what we do is we're preaching for a big yes. What we really want is people to give their lives to Christ, to accept the gospel and to be saved. That's the big yes. But we know that people don't necessarily say their big yes on the first hearing of the gospel. It takes a lot more steps. So before you get to the big yes, there is a healthy maybe. And Mark, the national evangelist for Elim, would suggest that most of what we do in church life is to engender a healthy maybe, is to turn skeptics to not just necessarily believers, but to change around people's cultural expectation of Jesus and of the church. So most of what we do, he would suggest at Christmas, is aiming for a healthy maybe, like I'm going to consider this, you know, you've made me think. And then the next step on that is a little yes. It's those who've made a decision not to follow Christ with their everything, but I'm going to look into this a bit more. I think I do believe in Jesus, but I'm not quite ready to follow him. So do you see the
yeah, and I guess that's where I guess that's also what follow, you know, and it's almost cyclical, some of this, that's where our relationships build in. That's where the community, a place to belong, is important for people. Absolutely. And creating some of that. Okay,
so in my planning, it particularly at West Kirby, we try and have a range of different events throughout the year that hit different levels of people's expectations. So you have things where people will get a whole gospel message. You have things that maybe are more looking at the big questions that they have. There are things like Alpha or the Start course that are overtly persuasional, and there's prayer things and shed loads of presence things. It's different levels to
So it's
help
having
connect.
all those things in place for people to connect in, to follow up, to explore, to learn, to grow, to belong, and we hope to believe.
And you don't start your event by going, good afternoon, welcome everyone, this is a persuasion event. No one else needs to know that, but we do. Yeah.
Thank you. So you've done all this research, you went to visit lots of great things, events. Share some of the highlights of those events. What you've tried perhaps and has worked well. So let me give you 3 questions as we think about events. What events have you tried that have worked? What events have you seen others do and you wish you'd done yourself? And perhaps another important one, have you experienced or witnessed things that didn't work so well?
Interesting. What have I seen that's worked really well? Well, let me tell you about one thing I went to go see in Coventry on my sabbatical. I went to see an inner city housing estate church called St Stephen's in Canley in Coventry. A small church, didn't have all the resources in the world, wasn't big, wasn't flashy, but what they'd done is they'd asked their community in the middle of this housing estate, what do you want us to do at Christmas? And they'd started this conversation about what Christmas should look like, and they did 2 things. They did a nativity trail. Now, lots of churches do nativity trails in their local community, but the difference with this one was that the community wrote it. Not Christians did not write it, which is interesting. So a local woman in the community took this on, and she wrote the script for this nativity trail. And she spent weeks knee-high in scripture, never read the Bible in her life. She spent ages reading the biblical accounts, reading up all about what Christmas was about, and wrote this script. And the idea was that it was filmed in different places around the community, and then by various different people that people would know, the local councillor, the shopkeeper. And so you would go to those places and scan a QR code outside that place, and it would show the video on your phone, right? Wow. As you walked around the community. So those people weren't live, they'd done all their bit beforehand. You just saw it, the video. And then as you walked around the community, you then got back to church, and then you were welcomed with hot chocolate and with a gospel leaflet and a conversation. And I thought that was a brilliant way of including members of the community who were really connected in. And the second thing they did, which I also, again, not rocket science, is they did a thing which they named Caroloke, like karaoke, but with carols. And the local drug dealer on the estate came up with the title. Interesting. We could just park that there. Interesting. And so they opened up the church and said, come and entertain us with a carol in any way, shape or form. And they were really surprised by who came and what people did. They were just full, and 50% of the people that were there had never set foot in the church before. They had more Silent Night renditions than anything else, apparently. Mostly kids taking part, but some people had written poetry. Some people were telling stories of what, you know, their connection to certain carols from their childhood. And it was something they'd never done before, but engendered lots of conversation. And let me read you a quote from one person, let me see if I can find it, who came to Caroloke. I'm going to see if I can find it in the, let me find it. They said, I've never been in a church before. and I was really nervous about whether I'd have to behave myself. But you were all really relaxing. You made me really relaxed and welcomed. I loved it. What a great opportunity, what a great kind of welcome to church for the first time. And it's not just hearing the story, which is important. And yes, of course, we believe that that's the big yes. The big aim is for people to come to know Jesus. Before we get to that point, people need to be comfortable around Christians and realise, actually, most of us are not bonkers. So I say most of us, we all know some who are. Most of us haven't got two heads, and most of us are full of grace and love and want to love you and want to like you and welcome you in. And I think that's a first step, is sometimes those low level fun events, to say, come and see, come and look. There's lots of fun we could do with our local communities doing that.
Comfy, healthy maybes. Right, before I open it up to everybody else, is there anything else that you want to say, Louise?
What have I done that hasn't worked well? For the past 3 years, West Kirby have tried to do their own community nativity trail, and every year it has rained. And so it doesn't work as well in the building. And so we're not doing it again this year. Okay. So you can't cope with the weather. You can't eat the weather.
So, but I mean, I guess that's important, is learning, if something doesn't work, to stop it and try something else, and that's just as valid.
Absolutely.
Can I invite people that if they want to ask Louise a question? This is where she looks nervous and she's on the spot. Then you just unmute yourself and ask away. Or if you've got an event that you've tried at Christmas that you think was you'd like to share with other people, we'd also like to hear that as well. So I guess it's over to everybody else now for your thoughts or questions.
What works well in your settings?
Stunned silence, Louise.
The people are waving. Do you want to call people to speak?
Sheila, do you just want to unmute yourself? That's the easiest way, is just for you to just simply unmute yourself and go for it.
I never know when to talk on these. What we have in Vicar's Cross is we have carols round our Christmas tree. It's a real tree that's actually donated by the funeral parlour across the road, Goulds. And on the Friday evening, which we have carols and soup and sing. So everyone's invited to come along and sing around the Christmas tree. We sing carols for maybe half an hour. Then we go inside and have soup and bread. And it's a lovely gathering. We really enjoy it. A lot of people actually don't belong to our church. They're just people that have gone to the shops and they've come across, and it works. I know that the parish council actually started this while we were doing ours, but they got a brass band and everything. So we thought, oh, well, we'll climb on that bandwagon. The weather was really bad this particular time. And I said, look, go into the church. Your band members are freezing. Go into the church. Oh, no, we can't do that. Why not? Oh, well, we can't because the church is religious. And I said, you are singing carols. This is Christmas time. What better time to be religious than now? Apart from that, your band's freezing. It's up to you. So they eventually stopped and they all went and had hot soup. But I've always remembered that we're too religious at Christmas time. But as I say, our soup and sing goes down very well indeed.
We did a similar thing a couple of years, for a few years running at West Kirby, singing carols around the tree, but we particularly aimed that just at the businesses in West Kirby. With our business, there's like a business, several different business forums, and we targeted them and targeted the shopkeepers. So after the shops had finished, to all come and celebrate. Christmas as a business community together, and that worked really well for a few years until COVID happened.
I think a lovely story to share with you of one of the churches in Chester that I've been doing some work with during COVID. The community, the church had a big star that was on the wall outside, and the community sort of self-gathered around the star and started singing carols because they needed this kind of outlet to be able to do that. And it was outside, and so it was all perfectly legal. And I just thought that was a lovely expression. And it ties back into this need for us to connect into Christmas, about something deeper going on. So yeah, the power of singing carols together, I think, is a really, really good, simple, effective event that we can do at Christmas. It's easy and accessible for most of us to do. Anybody else got anything they want to add or questions they want to ask? Richard, and then Martin after Richard.
I'm unmuted. Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
So I'd like to claim that this was Formby United Reformed Church, but it was actually the churches together in Formby. And a couple of years ago, they decided to have Advent windows in the shop windows. So each shop was given a carol, and again, there's a QR code. So if you click on that, you'll get the carol sung to you from the shop. And one of the shops, the second year they went in and said, "Do you want us to go?" Oh yeah, it's a tradition.
We've always done it.
Fabulous. Martin, you wanted to say something, I think.
Yeah, it's just going on the brass band theme. I came up with the idea at our church at Grange because we do have the evening carol service, but I kind of wanted it to be a bit more of this traditional thing and a bit more of a traditional draw. And we've had no problem with getting the brass band coming in and wanting to do it. Louise, I think you know Richard Ash from St David's, and it's Portson Lyceum Brass who are coming in to. My brother plays for them, so we're trying. For the first time, we're going to build on that tradition and open it up a lot more to the general public. And we're also doing, and this is from one of our elders, our past elders, we're doing Experience Christmas again at the church at the beginning of December. Now that's kind of not so much of an evangelistic event because we don't preach to the kids, as it were, but we talk to the kids about the Christmas story. And I just wanted, if any of you have got an idea of some sort of, and maybe message me later if you can, of some sort of tracts we could give to the children. You know, we've done it a few times and we've had various things that we've handed out, but if there's anything you have or you know of that you think, do you know what, this would really work well to give to the kids, for them and to take home as well, you know.
We at St David's and at West Kirby, we get our gospel literature from Life Words. Have you come across them?
I've 10 of those I've used, but Life Works.
Life Words. Oh,
okay, yeah.
So look them up. They do children's stuff as well, which is really good. And it's free, but a donation is encouraged.
Yeah, well, of course. Yeah.
I think it's a good reminder though, Martin, that when the Christmas story itself talks faith to people, the Christmas story is a message of hope that's accessible to all ages. So thank you for reminding us at that point tonight. Karen,
with regards to literature, UCB Radio also produced the Book of Hope. And actually, they produce a bag of hope, and it's coming out now for people to give out at Halloween, but it's also good for Christmas. And it contains a child-aimed gospel message. So, and you can contact UCB and you can get them free of charge. All you have to pay for is the postage.
And that's brilliant. And we also want to aim, because of the carol service, with having the brass band. We're opening it out to a lot more in the local community, and I'm going to look at getting some tracts for that. So certainly life words or this bag of hope, something we'll get out of that, I'm sure.
The Bible Society also do stuff as well. The Bible Society.
Yeah.
Lovely.
And there's also the Christian Publicity Organisation, which, I mean, you pay considerably more there, but they're normally very good. We
use them to help with the posters and things. And but good point. Yeah.
Judith's got her hand up, very patient.
I can see that, Judith.
I just wanted to share what we did last year, really. We got everybody under the sun who could knit or crochet to knit or crochet little angels, not necessarily little white angels, but little angels in every colour that was ever created. And then we printed a card, and inside the card we listed everything that was happening at St. David's, and it was like an invitation. We gave out about 500 via libraries and shops, and not that we had 500 people rushing in madly through the front door, but you know, it was letting people know that we were there.
We had lots of great conversations, didn't we, about people who go, oh, we had one of your angels, because they'd pick them up from the baskets in the local shops, and it's lovely when we get, you know, the shops to do our work for us. So.
The Wayside Public had angels in as well. That was the year before, but that was on she was on many selfies. Well,
she was literally the most terrifying looking angel that I mean, I know angels are not small fluffy cherubs and are terrifying in the Bible, but the one in the Wayside Pulpit at Easton was frankly terrifying to look at.
She just went a bit wrong. She's so alright, really.
But I guess what
people thought it was Halloween rather than Christmas.
I guess what we're picking up here on some of these is it's just that sense of invitation, that are us putting that invitation out there and allowing God then to work through that invitation, allowing God to be responsible for that event, and making sure that whatever we do then in that situation is really, really underpinned by our prayer life, about our praying for the people who receive the angels, or praying for the people who receive a biblical tract, so praying for the people who come and listen to the brass band. I think that's just really important.
And the thing I alluded to earlier on, the point number 5 that I learned was make the most of your new year. The churches that did evangelism really well at Christmas had something planned right after New Year for people to either come to or explore or do, and so people didn't leave an event without an invitation to something else. And I think that's really important. Maybe an alpha course or a start course or whatever works, a parenting course or a debt course or a bereavement course, not just a course but maybe a preaching series or something. It's really important to invite people on to something that they can connect to. Sorry, waffling again.
No, that's brilliant.
The thing about the angel that turned out to be quite terrifying actually confirmed what you said earlier, Louise, about it doesn't have to be perfect, because the terrifying angel actually became a conversation piece, didn't it?
Absolutely,
and it got people talking, and it got people taking selfies and all of that, and so it spread the word. So it worked.
Yeah, and I know another church who they had a kind of like a men's shed group that was connected to them in their local community, and they asked the men's shed group to do, you know, like when you go to the seaside and you have those things that you put your head through and you have your picture taken, you know, of people in bloomers or whatever at the seaside, and they had a nativity one of that, which they just put outside the church, and the whole community were taking selfies of, you know, here I am as Mary and Joseph, and, you know, and the kids with the, you know, sheep, and it was just if you can get people to do something like that, just a way of getting people to connect. And they had things in like a a waterproof case that they could take, you know, if you're interested in this, this is the story. And I just thought that was a great idea.
Similarly, one year when we were doing carol singing, we had a kind of pop-up nativity, so people could dress up as nativity characters and have a photograph taken again, and then just tape it off and then just carry on. And I guess it's that connection moment, isn't it? It's that, you know, I guess what we'd call it in modern day culture is that Instagrammable moment, but we're talking deeper than that. We're talking about that need to connect on a deeper level somehow to the spiritual connection that's going on, I think. So.
But even that shallow connection, it normalizes church. For people who are not church people to be a part of that, to have their photograph taken in costume and stuff like that, it makes the church part of the community, and it just makes it less scary.
It's the healthy maybe that
is.
Louise is talking about. Okay, thank you. Okay. Last chance for anybody else. Last chance for Louise to say anything final that she wants to say.
Oh no, do you know what preachers are like?
An hour ago.
I'll start talking and you won't be able to shut me up. Has anyone got anything else that they've done or that's really worked or been really helpful to share with other people?
I think the thing that St David's did during the COVID was brilliant. The nativity trail were invited businesses, households to create a nativity scene or anything to do with the Christmas story and have it in their gardens, in their shop windows, in their, you know, front house windows, and let us know where they are. And we made a trail, we made a map, and people went round following it on their own in family bubbles. And I thought that was brilliant because it got all the businesses involved, it got the local farmers involved, it got individual households involved, even the schools got involved. So, you know, I thought that was really good. And there's no reason why that shouldn't happen, regardless of whether we've got something like COVID going on. You know, it's something that would work anyway.
Yeah.
I was talking to Chris Rogers, who's a vicar in the East End of London, and they did a Advent calendar with people's flat windows. Yeah. So on the first day, they switched one light on that lit up the scene for day one, and the second day, and so on. So by the end of it,
in a block of flats.
Yeah, he was in flats and in apartments all around the estate. So the windows would then light up, but each light didn't come on until, like, you know, so light one came on day one, and then there'd be 2 different places on day 2 and 3 different places on day 3, and kind of in different places around the estate. And again, you could do that, something like that around your communities, just about thinking about these different ways that connect us back into our communities, that talk faith, that normalize everyday life, that engender those healthy maybes. So yeah, so thanks Louise.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks everybody else. Thanks for being part of our conversation, and we look forward to, perhaps, who knows, Talking Faith at Easter. We'll see what happens, but thank you everybody for all your time.